When you say, I love, are you sure those words are truly yours? Are you sure that feeling comes from within and wasn't planted in you by your mother, by movies, by poets, by religion? Are you sure it's love at all, or just a carefully curated script where you play a role written long before you knew what desire was? From childhood, we're fed myths. A girl is told, you are the nurturer, soft, spiritual. A boy is taught, be strong, generous, protect. From the start, love is not built on reality. It's constructed on roles that have nothing to do with truth. These aren't two people relating. It's a play, and everyone wears a mask. You don't love the person, you love the fantasy you've built in your mind. Take Mozart, for example, brilliant, sensitive, passionately in love with Constanze. He wrote her letters full of adoration, admired her even as she spent his money and played emotional games. The love of a genius is always risky. He projected onto her salvation, harmony, a soul in another body. And what did he receive? Distance, coldness, the endless need to prove his worth. He didn't love Constanze, he loved his idea of her. This is the trap, blind idealization. You lose the ability to see the line between who someone is and who you want them to be. That's not love, that's dependence on an image you crave. And when you crave, you are vulnerable. You expect purity, selflessness, unconditional tenderness. But in reality, every gesture carries a motive. Not because people are cruel, but because they're human, like you. And humans survive not through kindness, but through instinct. Romantic love hides a brutal hierarchy. Who influences whom? Who yields first? Who masters desire without appearing to? Female power isn't in noise, it's in silence, not in aggression, in invisible control. Where men seek logic, women read tone. They notice the pause in your breath, the flick of your eye, and you miss it. That's why you're exposed. Nietzsche didn't hate women. He rejected the false image that men created of them, the picture of the saintly, virtuous, angelic muse. That's not who she is, that's who you want her to be, because seeing her clearly as sharp, calculating, passionate, and intelligent shatters your framework. You lose your illusion, and with it, your illusion of control. The truth? Relationships between man and woman are never neutral. They are always negotiations of power. You don't just touch, you evaluate. You don't just listen, you decode. And so does she. Only better, quieter, because she was trained early. If you can't dominate through force, dominate through presence, through empathy, through selective vulnerability. She'll never say it outright, but she sees your cracks, and if you don't know where they are, you've already lost. The world isn't cruel, it's honest. But honesty is terrifying because it demands the end of fairy tales. It demands that you face what you don't want to admit. You don't love a person, you love your need, and as long as need controls you, you're not the chooser, you're being chosen. Look at Napoleon and Josephine. He adored her, wrote desperate letters, burned with jealousy. The Emperor of Europe bowed before her coldness. Why? Because she gave him what he couldn't control, distance. He chased her approval. She mastered the art of being near, but never fully reachable. Napoleon, the symbol of power, became a child in love, running after a mirage. You can be dominant in business, politics, even war, but if you don't see the emotional game, you're weak where it matters most, your core. And as long as you seek love as salvation, you will always be submissive, because anyone who seeks to be saved has already admitted their vulnerability. Love is not spiritual fusion. It's a transaction, sometimes noble, sometimes ruthless. It's a collision of two survival systems. It's not us, it's you and the other, each with fears, desires, and strategies. And if you don't recognize the strategy, you're not a partner. You're a target. Why are you so desperate to be necessary? Why does it matter so much to you to be chosen, to be waited for, to be someone's essential piece? You say you want love, but if we dig deeper, What you really want is to be needed. You crave to be the source of a feeling the other can't get without you. You're not seeking intimacy, you're seeking control through indispensability. That's not love, that's a transaction. Remember Vincent van Gogh, one of the greatest artists of all time, yet personally shattered, desperate, always starving for validation. He wrote to his brother Theo about the women he loved, but for him, love wasn't a union, it was an attempt to escape his own sense of worthlessness. His passion wasn't about the person in front of him, it was about his own pain, his hope that someone, anyone, would make him feel significant, and in the end, he was left alone. Because love born from hunger never leads to connection, only dependence. You say, I love her because she's special, but you're lying to yourself. You love her because she makes you feel special. You love her because you sense she's somehow worse off without you. You're not afraid of losing her. You're afraid of losing the power you gain from being needed. And here's the unsettling truth. She knows this. She senses it. She reads your need better than you do. And if she's smart, she'll use it like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Not out of cruelty, but because in this world, power isn't given. It's used or it's lost. You want to be the good one. You want to be the one who gives unconditionally. You call it real love. But often, it's just a disguised bargain. I'll give you everything, just please don't leave. Just please choose me. Just let me stay useful. But listen closely. Love built on need is self-imposed slavery. You're not an equal, you're a tool, you're convenience, comfort, a shelter. As long as you're useful, you're loved. But you offered this deal yourself. You put yourself in a position where you're not valued for who you are, but for what you provide. And that's the tragedy. Nietzsche knew. The one who is too eager to be needed has already surrendered, because true power doesn't come from being wanted, it comes from not fearing being unwanted. You want love? Start by giving up your fear of loneliness. Only those who can stand alone are truly free to choose. Everyone else is negotiating. You don't even notice how you've been programmed. Social media, pop songs, self-help videos, they all preach the same thing. Be kind, be generous, be open, and you'll be loved. But it's a lie. Because most people don't love you for your kindness. They love you for your usefulness. And usefulness is fragile. Tomorrow you're inconvenient and you're gone. Because you're not a person. You're a function. Look at Tolstoy, a genius, a prophet, a spiritual reformer. But in his marriage, chaos. He longed for unconditional love, yet he himself was torn between ideals and ego. His wife, Sophia, wasn't a muse or a saint. She fought against his emotional coldness, his obsession with being great, not just for the world, but for her. He didn't truly love her. He needed her, as a mirror, as a reminder of his own worth. Their relationship wasn't a union of souls. It was a battlefield of moral superiority and desperate relevance. And both suffered. You might say, but without need, there can be no connection. You're wrong. Real connection comes only when you don't seek validation. When you enter, not with emptiness, but with fullness. Not with, make me matter, but with the quiet strength of I am already whole. And that's where the real fracture begins. Because the moment you become whole, you become uncontrollable. You become dangerous. Because no one can manipulate you through approval, praise, or fear of loss. So the question is, are you ready for that? Are you ready to be loved, not because someone needs you, but because they choose you? Are you ready to stand beside someone who doesn't depend on you, but still wants you near? That's a different level. There's no room for emotional blackmail, no bargaining, no false promises. There's no fear, only truth. Pure, simple, sometimes painful. But in that space, there is freedom. Ask yourself honestly, are you in love with her or with your reflection in her eyes? Do you desire her or the feeling of significance she gives you when she reciprocates? Most people aren't looking for love, they're searching for validation. They want a mirror in which their weakness becomes charm, their insecurity becomes mystery, their fear becomes something finally accepted. You're not seeking another person, you're seeking proof that you're enough. Nietzsche never wrote about love as a merging of souls. He saw it as an instrument, a tool for self-affirmation, a battlefield of psychological tactics. You think you want to be with someone, but in truth, you want to be with yourself, as recognized, adored, accepted. Love becomes a disguised act of self-worship through the other. Think of Salvador Dali. His relationship with Gayla wasn't about comfort and softness. It was about power, admiration, and reflection. She wasn't just a partner, she became the living embodiment of his own genius. Through her, he confirmed to himself that he was exceptional, that he mattered, that he was worthy. He idolized her, but at the core, it was himself he was idolizing through her. She wasn't love, she was symbol, and you too. You don't want the person, you want the feeling she gives you. You're drawn not to her, but to how you feel about yourself when she's around. That's not love, that's relational narcissism. When the other is not the destination, but the tool, when you don't look at her as a person, but as a screen playing the film of your fantasies. And it works both ways. She may not truly see you either. She might see not a man, but a figure, a function, a resource. You're wanted not for who you are, but for how you make her feel about herself. And so the two of you stand across from each other, saying words of love, while in reality, each of you is looking into a mirror, not at a living human being. Love becomes a transaction. I'll give you what you want to feel. If you give me what I want to feel, these aren't relationships. This is a psychological marketplace. You say she hurt you, that she used you, but are you sure you were really with her? Or were you with the image she projected? Were you truly interested in her, or in what she made you feel about yourself? That's where awakening begins, in admitting that you were playing a role too, that you weren't just the one who suffered, you were also the one who used. You didn't want love, you wanted to be loved as evidence of your worth. You hoped her affection would heal your wounds, but that's impossible. No external love can ever fill an internal void, and then she leaves, or she stays but turns cold, and you suffer. But you're not grieving the loss of her, you're grieving the loss of the feeling she gave you about yourself. You no longer see yourself reflected in her admiring gaze, and that shatters your identity. You didn't lose a woman, you lost a mirror. You're angry? Good. Because truth always provokes, because it feels like an accusation, but it's not, it's liberation. Do you want to be free? Then stop needing reflection. Stop seeking confirmation through another. Stop looking at people as screens through which you prove your worth. Real love begins not when you find the perfect person, but when you stop needing perfection. When you can see another in their shadows, their flaws, their imperfections, and not let it threaten your sense of self. You want to be loved? Then first become someone who can love, not for image, not for function, not for benefit, but for reality. And that means you'll have to give up the fairy tale. You say, I chose her. Are you sure? What if you didn't choose? What if you were chosen? Silently, invisibly, through a glance, a pause, a perfectly timed withdrawal. What if you're not the subject in this story, but the object of someone else's strategy? You think you're the hunter? What if you're the prey, walking into the trap, believing it's your own decision? Nietzsche warned us, the most effective power is the one that goes unseen. You believe you're acting on your own desires, that you want, that you decide. But in truth, you may be driven by invisible impulses, fears, needs, unresolved insecurities that someone else reads better than you do. You're not choosing, you're reacting. And this is where it gets frightening, because that means your crushes, your obsessions, even your fated loves might not be free will at all, but the result of someone playing with your unconscious. Think of Cleopatra. Her art of influence didn't rely on shouting or conflict. It came from deep understanding of male psychology. She knew how to use mystery, how to direct attention, how to pull back at just the right moment. So the man believed he was in control. Empires didn't fall by swords, they fell by illusion. You think you're in control too? That you're choosing when you answer her messages? When you think about her late at night? When you chase her even when she's no longer chasing you? But maybe you're not deciding at all. Maybe she determines when to appear, when to pull away, when to give hope, and when to vanish. Everything precise, everything calculated. Not because she's cruel, but because she senses the game. And you do not. You don't even see how deeply you're hooked. You think you're free because you could walk away, but try not reacting to her silence. Try not searching when she becomes distant. Try not checking if she read your message. That's when you'll understand what real captivity feels like. When you're held not by chains, but by hope. And now you're trapped because you can't leave. Not because she's holding you, but because you built a script where her approval became your measure of worth. And now that she pulls away, you don't just want her, you want control back, but you control nothing. Because the one who reacts first emotionally loses. You might say, this is too cynical, but look at reality. Why are you more drawn to the one who's distant than to the one who's available? Why does absence ignite more desire than presence? Why do you run towards someone who plays with your emotions? Because what you crave isn't the person, it's the emotional high you feel when you win their attention after rejection. This isn't love. This is a pain addiction disguised as passion. It's dependency, not on the woman, but on your own sense of victory, on the fleeting moment when you feel important again, when you're accepted for 5 minutes, and as soon as she withdraws, you're nothing again. Because it was never a relationship, it was a cycle of dependency built on lack, on broken self-worth. And you weren't a participant, you were a resource. You're angry? Good. That means you're waking up, because freedom begins with the radical refusal to be a pawn in someone else's game, with admitting that you didn't choose, you were led, that you were being guided, that you handed over power, not because someone forced you, but because you were looking in others for what you were missing in yourself. True maturity isn't about controlling others, it's about recognizing when someone is controlling you. It's the ability to ask when every nerve inside you screams, get her back. What do I really want to reclaim? Her or the feeling of being wanted? That's when the shift begins. When you say, I'm done playing. I won't fight for attention. I won't chase silence. I won't reduce myself to function. You become dangerous because now you can't be played. Here you are standing at the edge. You've walked through doubt, pain, and exposure. You've torn off the masks, yours and theirs. You've seen that love isn't always light, isn't always kindness, isn't always salvation. You've seen that love can hide power games, trade, manipulation, ego. And now the most important question stands before you. Do you still want love, or are you simply afraid of being alone? Too many call their need love, but need is not a feeling, it's an escape from emptiness, from boredom, from loneliness, from yourself. You chase another to silence the noise within, to drown out the echo of your insecurity, your fragmentation, your fear, and in that escape, you become vulnerable, because anyone who gives you the illusion of wholeness becomes a god, and you a servant, because what you want isn't love. What you want is to forget. But Nietzsche whispers, don't run, stay. Sit with yourself long enough to stop fearing your own presence. Only the one who has survived solitude can truly love. Only the one who has faced their own darkness will not search for light in someone else. You want love? Start with truth, without filters, without masks, without drama. Look at yourself and ask, what part of me is so desperate to be needed? Why do I believe that without her, I'm nothing? Why do I build my worth on her reaction to me? You won't like the answer because it will show you a part of yourself you've been avoiding, a child who never felt enough, a man who doesn't feel powerful inside, a person hiding behind the role of the savior, the romantic, the knight, just to avoid facing his own void. But that's where transformation begins, because only the one who doesn't need love is capable of truly giving it, not because he's seeking, but because he's choosing. Not because he fears being alone, but because he wants to share his fullness. Not because he suffers, but because he's free. Love without illusion is not cold, it's clear. It's the union of two whole individuals who don't save each other, who don't fix, who don't trade, who don't cling. They walk beside each other not out of fear, but out of awareness. And only such a bond survives beyond crisis. True intimacy isn't emotional ecstasy. It's the ability to stay when nothing feels magical. It's the choice to remain when there is no reward. It's the capacity to look at someone not as the meaning of your life, but as a real, imperfect, sovereign being, and still choose closeness without fear, without deals. It's hard, it's terrifying, it's almost impossible because it demands complete internal maturity. But in that there is greatness, and now you stand, without illusions, without need, without dependency. You're no longer the hero of a love story. You're no longer a victim. You're no longer a savior. You are human, with your shadows, with your fears, with your depth. And you no longer seek love to be rescued. You are now ready to love because you no longer lose yourself in it. And here begins the real thing. The kind no song describes. The kind no movie dares to portray because it can't be sold. It's quiet, it's deep, it needs no audience. It's like a tectonic shift inside you, invisible on the surface, but capable of moving entire continents within. You no longer depend. You no longer seek reflection. You no longer rent out your soul for 5 minutes of borrowed significance. You are awake, and now finally you are capable of love that will not destroy you. Love not as escape, but as choice. Love not as need, but as offering. Love not as a mask, but as a union between two who truly see.